Hi guys, so in this very quick video really, this is going to be two of the PowerPoints that you did in your first lesson. So is music theory still relevant is really the kind of crux of this, and this relates directly to the first question on your reports for the assignment part one. You need to introduce what music theory is, but then argue whether you think any of this stuff is still relevant. Hopefully you will see the merits of it, but also see that there can be some negative sides to knowing all music theory. So one of my favourite quotes here, the second one, is that songwriting is different from music. Okay, although I don't deny now that it would be nice to have a little more background in music theory. Now that's written by Neil Diamond, who obviously is famous for Sweet Caroline, but many other what I would consider much better songs. He's a real master of songwriting of our time, and kind of implying there that he wishes, he knew a bit more music theory to help with the songwriting. And then Marvin Minsky, who's a psychologist, sort of says, we must see that music theory is not only about music, but about how people process it. To understand any art, we must look below its surface into the psychological details of its creation and absorption. So it's how is it used is quite important, because if all music theory was used in the same way, then all music would sound the same. So it's what you choose to take from music theory to apply to your art is what's important. Okay, so within this module, you will be introduced to the basic music principles that will allow you to listen to music and compose music with fresh perspective. For many years, I played music, I wrote lots of songs. It wasn't until I went back to become an educator in music that I realised my theory knowledge needed improving. And as I went through that path, there were certain concepts that I found that I thought, oh, if only I'd known this 20 years ago. A lot of what I was doing was conforming to these simple rules that, had I only known they existed, would have sped up my process. Okay, this is from the creators of Pro Tools, Avid. Avid Pro, they make Pro Tools, and Pro Tools is one of the most common and industry-wide used digital workstations for recording music. And they say that music theory is the study of fundamental elements that construct and govern the language of music, including notes, scales, chords, rhythm, melody, harmony, and form. It serves as a set of rules and guidelines that musicians use to create, analyze, and interpret music. While the term might seem intimidating, especially for beginners, understanding these basics can significantly improve your ability to produce, compose, and appreciate music at a deeper level. And that's what this is really all about. It really is to do with the language of music, and to be able to communicate with one another, to be able to understand each other. Having this basic language in music will help us communicate. And that's the crux of it. So, relevance of music theory in the 21st century. Without theory knowledge, it's much more difficult to communicate ideas with other musicians, artists, producers. Music theory can help us express ourselves through music and choose the right tools and methods to create and enhance emotion. So that links to things like dynamics and instrumentation and certain chord types, certain melodic flavors that we use essentially to create and enhance emotion. And that links really heavily to like film scores and things like that. The whole point of music is to try and emote people and make people move something, even if it is just to move them onto the dance floor. but music will be the soundtrack to many, many, many important parts of your life. Music theory can help us understand and articulate what is going on within the music. So being able to get a better understanding of what's happening in what we're listening to is a useful tool. It allows us to better contrast and compare music and deepen our enjoyment of music. We can use simple theory terms to identify and communicate complex musical ideas concisely. It's not all about complexity, though. Complexity. It may well be some of the greatest songs are very, very simple in terms of their application of theory. Music theory is used for perspective, but it is not a set of rules. That kind of contradicts what Arvid Sproul said. They are guidelines, but if we stick to them completely, then music can become quite predictable and a little bit safe and unchallenging. And so it's important to understand the theory but not be governed exclusively by it. I think the term that resonates with me the most is, if it sounds right, it is right. When you look at the PowerPoint, you'll see some nice reading links here. They link very well to some of those points we just made, and you will find extended arguments for each of those points I just raised. So things to answer in your opening statement. Why do you think music theory is important? Now for that, it's important to have your own opinion, but also I would certainly include a couple of quotes as to what others think. The risks of knowing too much theory, that really links to being governed by it and music becoming unchallenging. There's something to be said about not knowing everything, or at least if you do, don't be governed by it too much, because as previously stated, it can become unchallenging and predictable. Music theory is still relevant in 2024. Well, anyone who goes to the theatre or a concert in a classical form, or the theatre to see a stage show, those musicians are high-level musicians that are reading music and using their sight reading capabilities. I would argue that sight reading is a little less important than it used to be on a kind of regular working musicians level. But the language of music is what we're after. That's what we need to digest. That is relevant, as is any language. We need to be able to communicate, and knowing some theory terms is going to help us communicate with each other as musicians. And that kind of links to question 4 I just said there. Any areas of music that have become less important? I think with the advancement of Logic and Cubase and Pro Tools and all of these wonderful DAWs, they can take a piece of music that we've played and then they have the ability to turn it into a score for us. We don't necessarily need to be able to, write music per se in notation format. However, we do need to be able to understand harmony and things like that. So when setting up your reports, please include a cover sheet. That should have the course title, module title, assignment title, and your full name. Please also include a contents page, main body of report, where you'll see the suggested headings there, and some form of conclusion at the end, with a bibliography and a final word count.